Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Most Accurate Podcast. I am your host, Addison Hayes, joined, as always, by one of the most accurate rankers in the entire fantasy community, John Paulson. John, how are we doing on this fine Week 10 morning?
Yeah, it's early November now. We're getting into Thanksgiving season. Spooky season's over, and then before you know it, the Christmas stuff will be out. So
I, I already, every year around on November 1st, Mariah Carey usually releases like a TikTok video saying that it's Christmas season and that she's now unfrozen. So I saw that video a few days ago. So we are, I think for a lot of people, we are kind of more in the Christmas season. They like to jump over Thanksgiving. I don't. I
yeah,
love me some Thanksgiving.
I love my Thanksgiving. We got the Packers at Lions on Thanksgiving Day this year. I'm
Mhm.
gonna enjoy it, and then once Thanksgiving's over, we can start with the Christmas music. That's my rule in the Paulson household.
I'm here for it. Usually, the Black Friday is the day we put up the Christmas tree, or that weekend, I should say, is the Christmas tree for the Hayes household. Anyway, we're here to talk about some football, some fantasy football for Week 10. Sneaky starts. We got two players at all four positions, totaling 8 players that we consider to be good starts that you don't have to force into your lineup if you have better options. But if we do believe that these players have a really good chance of outproducing their projections and just having a really strong game this week, that you should be trying to get into your lineups. And this week, we do have, it's not the bye-pocalypse, but we do have four teams on bye, 3 of which are really hard-hitting offenses in the Bengals, Cowboys, Chiefs. Then the Titans are on bye. Not sure if anybody cares about that. But the other 3 specifically have some very good fantasy players that are no longer on bye. And I think one of the other things for us, specific to this episode, John, is that we don't have the Bengals or the Dallas Cowboys defense to attack with our sneaky start. So we had to go a little bit deeper than just say, well, these guys are facing the Cowboys or these guys are facing the Bengals. So it was a little bit more challenging this week without those defenses. But we should be good. We should be good. So, John, why don't you kick us off with your quarterback sneaky start for Week 10?
Well, fortunately, there are still some good, some good defensive targets to target or bad defenses to target. I don't know what the right phrasing there is. I mean, I'm looking at Jared Goff at Washington. And the reason I wrote him up, maybe it's obvious to people or maybe it's not, but he's on the road this week. And usually I preached, be careful with him on the road, but in a good matchup on the road, or a great matchup in this case on the road, you can deploy Jared Goff with pretty good confidence. The one issue with Goff and the Lions is that sometimes they just are able to run the ball at will and he doesn't have to throw any touchdowns and you end up with kind of a 10-point fantasy day or something like that. But I think the offense is humming. They like to move the ball through the air, and Washington is 27th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. They've given up an average of 269 yards and 2.11 touchdowns per game, 8.85 yards per attempt allowed. And Goff is doing well in his last 2 green matchups, and this qualifies as a bright green matchup or a green matchup on the Hotspots report. He threw for 334 and 5, and that was against the Bears, and then 258 and 3 against the Bengals. So I think we can safely use Goff this week for a ceiling game.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I had Jared Goff as a buy target on this YouTube channel a week ago, mainly for the rest of season schedule that he has, because he has the majority of the games that he has left are at home, or the 2 of his 4 away games are in a dome. So that those are usually better games for Jared Goff. But I did note that the 2 defenses that he was playing on the road were Washington, and then I think he gets Philly either next week or the week after in Philadelphia. So we don't love Jared Goff on the road, as you mentioned, but against those specific defenses and those matchups, that they are better defenses to at least target for Goff to do well on the road. So I like the call this week for Goff against the Commanders. I'm going on the opposite side of this game with my quarterback. I'm going with Marcus Mariota against the Detroit Lions. They are 19th in adjusted fantasy points allowed right now. Mariota has been a decent start for most of his matchups, or he's only had 3 games started for Jaden Daniels, but he's either thrown for 200 more yards or 2 touchdowns in all 3 of those games. He's rushed for between 20 to 40 yards in all of those games as well. So he's giving you decent passing production, good rushing floor as well. And the Lions, like, they're not like a phenomenal matchup that we want to just constantly target every week with quarterbacks. But they have given up some good production to quarterbacks over the past few weeks. I mean, McCarthy last week only threw for 140 yards, but he threw for 2 touchdowns and also ran in a touchdown. So he had a pretty good performance there. Patrick Mahomes obviously threw 250 and 3. Jake Browning threw 250 and 3. Lamar 290 and 3. So they have been susceptible at times to opposing quarterbacks. And Mariota, I think in a matchup where he's going to have to throw a little bit more, he's probably going to have I'd say a decent number of opportunities to at least put up some yardage, maybe even run in a touchdown and give you more of a floor game rather than a ceiling game if you need that this week.
Yeah, I almost picked Mariota. I've got him ranked fairly high. I think it's 16 or 17 this week. I think he's a fine streamer. And this is a byproduct of people losing Jaden Daniels. But Mariota, since he has come to the Commanders last 2 years, I mean, he only appeared in a few games last year, but he had a 185% snap game and a few other appearances. He's been pretty, if you add up all his numbers in Washington, he's been really efficient. Except for that Chiefs game, which, 11.3 fantasy points in that game. Not the greatest, but we can expect that. The Chiefs defense tends to be pretty stingy against the pass. Detroit 19th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position. They've given up the 10th most raw fantasy points to quarterbacks. And they also, looks like they are 7th in passing touchdowns allowed. Middle of the pack against, in terms of rushing yards allowed, maybe a little bit on the upper end of that middle of the pack type area there in the rankings. So I think it's a good one. And this is certainly an area where you expect Detroit to put up points and get Washington into more of a pass heavy, a lot of dropbacks type game script and maybe playing fast, trying to catch up.
I wanted to ask you before we moved on, we've had this conversation before with backup quarterbacks, and we seem to be having more backup quarterbacks playing this week, and especially whenever you've lost Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott on bye, you don't have them. Maybe you were streaming Joe Flacco for the past couple of weeks, you don't have him this week, and you're scouring those waiver wires. Is Mariota kind of the top quote unquote backup quarterback that you would add and play this week, or would you look at a Jacoby Brissett? Would you look at is Tyrod Taylor going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets? I mean, they play Cleveland. That doesn't sound great. Tyler Shuck now for the Saints. Davis Mills. The Jaguars defense has been, at least the passing defense is a little bit iffy, but it is still Davis Mills. Is Mariota your top kind of go-to backup quarterback?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the Jets situation. I still have Fields in the rankings. Mariota at 15. Maybe Darnold. I don't know if he'd be on the waiver wire in some leagues. Maybe he would be. I've got him at 13. McCarthy at 16. Brissett at 18. Mac Jones at 19. Still not sure about Brock Purdy. Michael Penix is sort of interesting at 21. But yeah, Mariota of that group of, pick up and start type players, I think might be the top one.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at as well. I was going to throw Penix in here, but then I don't know, Sauce Gardner now to the Colts, it makes the Colts secondary look a little bit stronger. So we'll just have to see. I don't know. Maybe he's not as integrated in the first week. He just got cleared through the concussion protocol too. So maybe Sauce isn't going to be as impactful this week for Penix. But Penix can also be weird as well. So I was debating between the two, but I like Mariota the most. Let's move on to the tight end position. John, why don't you kick us off with your tight end sneaky start for this week?
Yeah, there's so many like tight end 2 types that have good matchups that I ended up doing my sneaky start section in bullet point format because there was too many players to write up. So I had quite a few to choose. If you don't like the one I picked, then there's many more to pick from this week. But Theo Johnson is the kind of the guy who maybe jumps out a little bit. At Chicago, 24th in adjusted fantasy points allowed to the position. They've given up an average of 6.5 receptions for 58 yards, 0.5 touchdowns. Theo Johnson has a really nice rapport with Jackson Dart. They're good friends. He's caught 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games, so he's almost the AJ Barner of the East Coast. Real big threat for a touchdown. He's also a really good athlete, and we saw that on that tipped ball that he ended up flukily catching and running for a long gain a couple weeks ago. So Theo Johnson, good matchup, been productive, and he's athletic. So I think that's a pretty good spot.
I like it a lot, especially as a Penn Stater. My tight end this week is Kyle Pitts. He has kind of low key been a solid fantasy tight end this year. He's actually averaging 11 PPR points per game this season. He has seen 6 or more targets in 5 out of 8 games. He's had 59 or more receiving yards in half of his games. He just couldn't get to 60 in a couple of those. So I had to set that to 59 yards in 4 out of 8 games this year. So he's kind of been pretty decent. And even though, it is still like Kyle Pitts, I don't think the fantasy community is like back in on him like they were for his rookie year and is still kind of sour on him for the past couple of years that he's had. But he's been pretty solid. And then he gets an Indianapolis Colts defense as 29th in adjusted fantasy points allowed. They've been beat by a handful of tight ends this year, including Oronde Gadsden's big, massive breakout where he had 160 yards and a touchdown. Chigakonkwo has played them twice in division. He's put up 50 plus receiving yards on them in both games. They've also allowed a tight end to an opposing tight end in 4 straight now. And as I mentioned, with the addition of Sauce Gardner, that if he is going to be playing and is kind of being an issue shadowing Drake London, that could also force more targets towards Kyle Pitts. So I think Pitts has just been a really solid like floor option. He's only scored once this year, and I think that's been the major reason why he hasn't been better, despite seeing all the targets and the receptions that he's gotten this year. But in this matchup, we could see touchdown number 2 for Kyle Pitts, and if he does, that's already going to give you a good week. But on top of the potential for 5 for 50, 5 for 60, anything like that, we could see a pretty solid game out of Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I agree. I've got him, I think, ranked at 10 or 11 this week. He's an interesting dude because I think I have him at 10 at half PPR. So he's an interesting dude because he's sort of been picking up the Darnell Mooney slack. Last 2 weeks ago against Miami, Drake London was out and Pitts had 9 targets, but he's been involved otherwise too, like 7 targets last week, 9 the week before against Miami, and then 10 targets against San Francisco the week before. He's got 20 total receptions in his last 3 games. And just looking at his green matchups, and this is a bright green matchup against the Colts last week against New England, 4 for 38 on 7 targets, not that great, but 9 for 59 against Miami and 9 targets, and then back in week 4 against Washington, 5 for 70 and that aforementioned touchdown on 5 targets. So highly efficient. Hopefully he has another efficient game this week.
Moving on to the running back position, John, I like your call here a lot. So why don't you kick us off here for running backs?
Yeah, this sort of depends on Ramondre Stevenson's toe, but it seems, he's out. He was out of practice yesterday. I haven't seen his status for today. If he sits out again, I like TreVeyon Henderson. Not so much as a runner against the Bucks, depending on the tackle Vea there if he's available.
Mm-hmm.
But the Bucks have given up the most receiving yards to the running back position, 58.3 per game. So I'm looking when those lines pop up and we know what Henderson's receiving total is. I'm looking to take the mores on that. Terrell Jennings was involved as a runner last week, but Henderson ran 28 routes to Jennings 4. So clearly he is the primary pass catcher of this backfield with Ramondre Stevenson out, assuming Stevenson will miss another game. At this point, if he does, look for Henderson to have a big day receiving.
Yeah, you also wonder if maybe you mentioned, one of the biggest reasons the Buccaneers are so good against the run is because Vita Vea just sucks up everything in the middle. TreVeyon has been really effective on outside runs this year, so you wonder if on top of the receiving workload, if they're able to get TreVeyon kind of running more towards the perimeter, if that could mitigate some of Vita Vea's impact on the running game and also give TreVeyon the opportunity to get out in space and utilize his skill set to the maximum. So we could see, some more outside runs to where maybe his efficiency is a lot better on top of the receiving workload. And I think had he scored a touchdown last week, we would be, I think, way more positive on TreVeyon than what we are right now, just because he just kind of had a very bland-ish kind of game. But had he scored last week, he would have been really good. And I think if he scores this week, he could be really good on top of the receiving work for sure, but then possible decent rushing upside as well. My running back is going to be Aaron Jones. He gets the Baltimore Ravens 28th ranked defense in adjusted fantasy points allowed. Since returning 2 weeks ago from injury, he has taken over essentially as the Vikings RB1. He's kind of relegated Jordan Mason to just not being really anything. And he had 98 yards on 11 touches last week before leaving early with a shoulder injury. Jones, I believe, did say that he could have come back in, but then he also said this week that it should be good to go for this week, despite not practicing yesterday. I consider that more of a rest day. And we should see hopefully some limited practices here, if not even a full practice for him Thursday and Friday. So assuming that Aaron Jones does play, the Ravens defense, they've given up a decent number of touchdowns to opposing running backs and a lot of receiving work to opposing RBs as well, both of which kind of go hand in hand with Aaron Jones's specific skill set. And if they do need to throw more, you would think that there's a possibility of some dump off passes, some screen passes and stuff towards Aaron Jones, to where he's kind of become a reliable running back option for JJ McCarthy over the past couple of weeks, last week specifically. And kind of very similar to TreVeyon, if he's getting that receiving workload and a little bit of rushing upside, maybe a touchdown, we could see a pretty decent day from Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote up Aaron Jones, and I did also put or Jordan Mason in parentheses if Jones were to sit, because players are notoriously optimistic about their status, but if he does play, I think Jones is certainly the guy you want to have of the two. They both finished with 11 touches last week, but Jones had 11 of the first 14 backfield touches before leaving the game. So then Mason got 8 more after Jones left the game. So clearly they are favoring Jones right now. Mason hasn't been particularly good this year, which is a little bit surprising given how well he played last year. He is averaging 4.28 yards per carry, but he hasn't really been over 4 yards per carry since the Bengals in week 3. But if Jones sits, I think Mason will move up pretty significantly in the rankings as well. Baltimore, 138 yards allowed on average with 1.25 touchdowns to opposing backfields this season.
Then the final position, the wide receiver position, the one that I feel like, especially from the bye weeks, feels a little bit more impactful considering that we are down Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens, and Rashee Rice, and any possibility, even though you probably didn't want to play Xavier Worthy since Rice is back, but you don't have Worthy either. And you don't have Chimray DK, which is sad. Anyway, the wide receiver spots, 2 sneaky starts here. John, why don't you start us off here at this position?
Yeah, Chris Godwin's still out, so the Bucs are looking for answers at receiver. Tez Johnson has quietly been a steady contributor. He's got at least 43 yards in 4 straight games. He's found the end zone twice in that span. 15 targets over the last 2 weeks, and Mike Evans is out. Chris Godwin doesn't look like he's going to play. Plus, the matchup is favorable, I would say. The Patriots have an elite rush defense, so I don't think Rashad White or Bucky Irving, if he's able to come back, are going to have much success. They're going to have to throw the ball quite a bit, and I think that is going to leave Johnson with an extra couple of targets. They've given up 133 yards on average, 1.11 touchdowns to opposing receivers this year, the Patriots, in a pass funnel kind of setup. So this one is kind of a sneaky shootout as well with these 2 quarterbacks that are pretty hot.
Yeah, I think the shootout possibility is very high here for Tampa, New England. And I think Tez Johnson, just like he was prior to the bye week last week, is still a really good start with Chris Godwin out. Similarly, on the opposite side of the ball, I do not expect Kayshon Boutte to play this week. He had a hamstring injury that kept him out. He did not practice yesterday. And hamstring injuries can be more of a multi-week absence than anything. So I'm not expecting Kayshon Boutte to play on Sunday. And if that's the case, I think that Demario Douglas is a sneaky start this week against the Buccaneers. He had 4 for 100 and a touchdown last week against the Falcons. And has also kind of been more of a big play machine. I know he had 3 for 71 and 1 4 weeks ago. He had 1 44-yard catch the week prior to this past week against the Falcons. And he's had a history of production prior to Drake May of like solid PPR value. So like, it's not like he's just kind of come out of nowhere. He's had a little bit of a history, and then he's also done well with Drake May this year. The Buccaneers, while they're not an amazing matchup that we like absolutely should be playing everybody, uh, against them for wide receivers. They have obviously allowed some pretty big games to Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Kendrick Bourne got him in one of his two like Kendrick Bourne games this year with Mac Jones. Rashid Shaheed had 9 for 75. Olave in that same game, 8 for 63. That was in the week 8 game prior to the Buccaneers week 9 bye. Cup was 6 for 59. Horton was 3 for 39 and a touchdown in that same game that JSN killed them. But also, I don't necessarily think matchups necessarily matter with how well Drake May is playing right now. He's just elevating this whole entire offense to a whole new level. I think Stephon Diggs is a pretty good start, but I also think that Demario Douglas is more of a sneaky start for a double-digit, perhaps 14 plus PPR type performance in a possible shootout, as we mentioned.
Yeah, he's interesting. You're looking at his game log. He's been under 25% snaps for 4 straight games. And I was just looking at last week, like how did they divvy up the routes, and he only ran 13 routes. And I think it's because he's basically playing the slot receiver behind Diggs, so they have to move Diggs out or have Demario play outside, which I don't think they really want to do. Kyle Williams and Mac Hollins both had 20 routes last week. So I was originally, when you were talking, thinking, oh, they were going to probably go with Diggs, Hollins, and Douglas as their 3 receivers. But they may, I think with Douglas's performance last week, it's a good call because he had the production and they probably want to get him on the field. I am a little worried about his playing time because it's hard to really have consistent production with 25% of the snaps. That said, with Booty out, there are routes available, and you would think that they would give it to the guys that are producing.
If there's any possibility that Kyle Williams can get involved more this week, I would absolutely love that as a major Kyle Williams fan. But it just seems like Vrabel, for whatever reason, maybe Kyle Williams isn't as good as I thought, but maybe Vrabel also doesn't like him, kind of like he didn't really like TreVeyon. He has a rookie issue. And then I'm not starting Matt Collins, so I think if I'm going for somebody in this New England game, that's why I'm going with Demario Douglas. As I mentioned, Diggs is a good play. But yeah, give me Demario Douglas, like you mentioned, as the guy who's already produced in a limited role, so give him more opportunities against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those are going to be our 8 sneaky starts for Week 10. Is Jared Goff, Marcus Mariota, Theo Johnson, Kyle Pitts, TreVeyon Henderson, Aaron Jones, Tez Johnson, and Demario Douglas. So we're going to move over to the Bleacher Nation Fantasy Card segment of this show, where the Bleacher Nation Fantasy app is a pick'em style game, very similar to Underdog or Prize Picks, where you just scroll through the entire slate, find a player prop that you like, either hit more or less, build out your card, and you get a payout multiplier based on how many legs you have in your card. They are running a promo leg for the Sunday slate of Justin Herbert, more than half a passing yard. That is for new users only, which they define as anybody who has not yet played a single play. So if you are new and you are signing up, you qualify for a new user. Or if you've previously signed up but have not yet played, you would also qualify for the promo leg of Justin Herbert, more than half a passing yard. So I would definitely advise throwing that into your lineup this Sunday. John, why don't you hit us with your leg for Week 10?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Jared Goff, and I'm going to say more than 248 and a half passing yards. 4 straight quarterbacks have had more than that number versus Washington, and 7 of the last 8 and 7 of 9 on the season. Goff went over or did more last week against Minnesota with 284. He almost had that number. He had 241 against Tampa. He completes one more pass. He's got it. At KC, he had 203. At Cincy, 258. So he bounces around above and below that number. I think it's a fair number for him, but it depends on whether or not they want to throw the ball and, not just run the ball against the Commanders. The Commanders have given up, I think, the 4th most passing yards per game, 253.6. The most passing, not the most passing touchdowns, up there, top 3 or 4. Yeah, 4th in passing touchdowns allowed. So the Lions aren't just like doing run only this year. They are attacking weaknesses, and the Commanders have weakness in both rush and pass defense. But I think if Mariota can keep it reasonably close, which we think he can, then the Lions will have to throw the ball a bit, and he'll get that number.
I do like that number. I looked up what Amon Ra's number was. He's at 80.5 receiving yards, and I know the Commanders from the majority of the year they've been really suspect against slot receivers as well. London got them hard, McConkey got them, and a couple others. So I mean, Amon Ra's phenomenal. He can just get to 80 yards on any given day. But in a positive matchup and in one where we expect Goff to get to 250 passing yards, you would think that at least 81 of those would go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I'll throw that out as a possible stack kind of leg if you wanted to throw that in there. But my official leg this week is going to be Drake May, more than 235.5 passing yards. He's been over this in 6 out of 9 games and then was at 230 in a 7th game. So 7 out of 9 games, he's been at least in the 230s. 6 out of 9 games, he's been over this. It just really hasn't mattered what team he plays. He's just going to produce and he's going to throw. And if, considering the fact that Tampa Bay has a really good run defense, if they are able to kind of mitigate the run a little bit and hold Henderson and Jennings in check, assuming that Ramondre doesn't play, but I don't think Ramondre is going to be the reason why Tampa Bay's rush defense breaks. So if they're able to hold the run game down, May might have to throw a little bit more. And we've also talked about the potential for this being a more high scoring shootout matchup. So 235.5 passing yards for Drake May feels like a really good number for him to hit. And all right. Ooh. So those are the legs that we were going with the Justin Herbert promo leg for new users only. Jared Goff, more than 248.5 passing yards. Drake May, more than 235.5 passing yards. I also mentioned the Amon-Ra one if you wanted to throw that in there as well. So if you play those 3 legs with the promo leg, it's a 6x payout. And if you throw in that Amon-Ra leg in there, I believe that vaults you up to a 10x payout potentially on 4 legs. So potential huge payout multiplier on Sunday from the Bleacher Nation Fantasy app. So those are our official plays for the Bleacher Nation Fantasy app this week. We got the Justin Herbert promo leg of more than half a passing yard, Jared Goff more than 248.5 passing yards, and Drake May more than 235.5 passing yards, with the added bonus of Amon-Ra more than 80.5 receiving yards. So that is our Bleacher Nation Fantasy card for this week, and that is going to wrap up today's episode of the most accurate podcast with Week 10 sneaky starts. We will catch you guys next week on Team Map. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend and win all of your matchups, and we will see you guys next week. Peace.